Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship of the Rink. Joe Smith here with me. We actually weirdly have, for the first time in a little bit, wild news to touch on. But before we do, Joe, episode 68, it would feel a little criminal to not mention the insane stat that we keep on hearing now for 45th year straight. We've got a 45-year streak of players who were teammates of Jaromir Jagr playing in the Stanley Cup Finals. That's insane.
I mean, almost 5 decades. And I know he played for a long time, but it's like the trade trees that never die. Right now, it's like his career championship tree. It's pretty cool. Obviously, he had a lot of time with these Florida Panthers. At the end of his career, but I think he's still playing, right? For his hometown club. The guy has such an impeccable shape and the work ethic there. And so I think guys like Barkov and before that Huberdeau and the younger players on that team really, they didn't win when he was there, but I think they're paying dividends now.
Yeah, and he's the kind of player that it feels like an exception needs to be made for him needing to be completely done with hockey in order to be officially inducted into the Hall of Fame. But whatever, it'll happen when it happens. He'll probably be 70 years old at that point. Mentioned we'll get into a couple wild topics here for everybody, keep you fresh, but also got an awesome interview banked here. Judd Bracket coming on for the second time, talk wild prospects, NHL Draft. Joe, you were gone when this happened, but the one we joked about, Marcus Johansson, contract year. Mm-hmm. He got it done. Mm-hmm. He did it. I want to know what your opinion is, because I think we know what the general public sentiment is from Wild fans. Do you think that this is at all a precursor for any other moves that might be made, whether it's guys being traded out or just not believing in certain players being able to step in and fill roles? Or is he really just here as like a fourth line, 13th forward kind of player?
I don't think Johansson's a 13th forward here. I hesitate to say that they're going to pencil him in as a second line winger all last year, right? I don't think he'll be a guy who's healthy scratch 13th forward unless they make some other pretty big moves this summer. And I think $800,000, I think there was rumblings he was going to play for his hometown team back in Sweden to end his career, but I think he in his heart of hearts wanted to play in the NHL still and have a family likes it here, have some continuity here. He's been at the deadline edition 4 different times in the last 8 years, right, or something like that. So he's like to have that stability, and at the end of the season and in the playoffs, he did show some of his value there, right? He didn't have a great season overall, especially for the role that he played. But I think when he started to be more noticeable toward the end of the year, and then obviously in the playoffs too, when they needed a secondary offense. So I don't hate the deal, especially when it's 1 year and it's $800,000, albeit with the no trade clause. But it is an interesting wrinkle in the fact of we thought potentially guys like Liam Ogren could be slotting in that middle six winger spot. And there's still a chance that Liam does. He showed a lot last year, but having Marcus Johansson in the fold also opens things up to where if the Wild consider trading, let's say a Liam Ogren, this summer as part of a bigger package and a deal that gets them something in return, then I think that is not out of the realm of possibility. So I don't think one signals the end of the other, but I think having some depth there up front at a cheap price, and knowing the injuries they had last year and how hard it was to fill from Iowa, there's not a ton of NHL ready depth there at the forward spot, as you saw. So instead of banking on a for sure having Urov, Ogren, Riley Heidt or whatever able to play, having a guy like him at $800,000, I think people would get it as long as it doesn't take away from the young players if they are on this team, right? I'd rather have Liam Ogren playing a second line role if he's earned it. But I just don't see Marcus Johansson playing a 13th forward role. I think if he's 13th forward on this team, he plays in Sweden and he finishes his career there and makes more money. I just, that's never been his game or his role. And I just don't think it necessarily, unless some things go differently this summer, will be his role this year.
No, that's fair. And I mean, you mentioned the point there with, hey, is Liam Ogren going to take a middle six spot? Is he a guy that could be on the way out? It feels like every single fan and most members of the media around the Wild are pretty much convinced that he's stapled DeMarco Rossi in whatever trade is upcoming. Is there any new news just around like teams that are potential suitors or interested in Rossi's services, or any gauge on what his value is at this point?
Well, we did a story last week on The Athletic, Mike Russo and I, about kind of that topic of what we're hearing about the Rossi trade scenario. They had some more negotiations or talks with Rossi's camp, and it doesn't seem like they were getting any closer or any more in a positive direction as far as a contract. So I think it is leaning more in that direction of a trade. And we put several potential destinations in our story. You know, I think Vancouver Canucks make a lot of sense, and they're one that are looking for a kind of a second line center. And they have like Michael Rossi. You know, Calgary Flames are part of that. Buffalo, you know, Winnipeg is looking for kind of another center up the middle. And we had the Carolina. Like there's a bunch of teams that make sense as far as having needs there, and there's some that we've heard that have showed interest, whether they have the pieces, or Philadelphia Flyers, another one, whether they have the pieces to get back. And we know that Bill Guerin and the Wild are definitely looking for a player in return, not futures, right? Like a first round pick or a third round pick or a prospect. I think they want player or players back in this deal, whatever it looks like. So I don't know if that's going to get you a wing or get you a center, or you handle one of those needs in free agency, one of those deals of the trade. But clearly, as we've seen, so far before free agency, there's not going to be a bevy of options up the middle. And if they're going to trade their 60-point scoring number 2 center or number 3 center or number 4 center, I guess, in the playoffs, you have to have some security blanket or somebody else to come in and play. A, for depth, B, because then at some point, with injuries, maybe we have Freddie Goudreau as number 2 center. So you think you need to have a backup plan or a plan in place if you're going to move Marco, which is very well could be the case.
And that plot thickens even further with Brock Nelson, who, it was no secret, that was one of the top targets for the Wild this offseason, signs a 3-year contract, $7.5 million per, with the Colorado Avalanche. First question, would you have wanted Bill Guerin to pay that contract? And then second question is, where do we go from here?
That's a good question. 7.5 now isn't your pre-Suns 7.5, right? The new cap numbers, right? Isn't pre-Logan's, 7.5. So that number isn't quite as bad as it would have been a couple of years ago. But, you knew you had to pay a free agent like that a pretty decent amount, especially on a shorter term deal like that. So I think the Wild might have paid that amount or close to it. That he was a guy that they circled as a potential guy they can put in behind Joel Eriksson that can provide some help everywhere, penalty kill, power play, face-offs, everything. And so he's kind of one of those guys that could really provide a boost there, and that gives Urov some time to work his way in. And I think now, that forces a plan B situation where, you're looking at guys that are available. Jonathan Toews is one of them. John Tavares is one of them, and he very well either could stay in Toronto and wants to stay in Toronto, or he's aged pretty well considering where he is in this point in career. Matt Duchene, I know he enjoyed playing for Hines before. I don't know if he's necessarily the guy that the Wild are looking at now, but I think, knowing what the options are out there in free agency, makes me inclined to think that they could try to find that answer for a center position via trade. We'll find out a lot more in the next 2-3 weeks in that particular situation. But yeah, I think Brock Nelson, all of us thought or assumed or felt that was a fit, but the player has to want to sign there, right? And I don't think it went particularly well for Brock in Colorado. I think that both he and anybody else would say the same as far as his production level and what happened there after the deadline. They gave up a lot, like Keelan Ritchie and some top picks to the Islanders for him. And I think that was a contract offer that the Islanders offered. Nelson was 7.5 too, coincidentally. But I guess if you're going to make that investment and then all of a sudden lose him for nothing, I can see why Colorado is banking on it after a full season or two with him would be advantageous for them. So just crosses one off the board.
There's no way to know for sure, and this isn't at all speaking against the player that Brock Nelson is, because I don't think what we saw this postseason is just what he is now. But does this feel like one that the Avalanche brass felt like they had to get him to stay because of everything they gave up?
And like knowing how smart that front office is, and McFarland and Sack, they don't seem to be guys that reek of desperation.
Sure.
But I think it's hard to not take into account the fact they lost in the playoffs earlier than they wanted to. B, they came off the Rantanen situation where they didn't pay him enough, or in theory didn't offer him enough, or he left and then torched them in the playoffs. We all heard Nathan McKinnon's comments after the playoffs and kind of where do they go from here. So, if they did lose Brock Nelson in the free agency, they'd be just going right back in the middle and trying to find that person. I think they've been trying to replace Kadri too, since he left. So, I don't think it's a horrible move by Colorado to do it. I think if you bank on a guy whose track record for his whole entire career has been a very good player. But yeah, it definitely takes a domino off the board there for not just the Wild, but a lot of other teams are looking for a center this summer.
Yeah, he reeks of a guy that the first year or two of that contract, Wild fans are going to be kicking themselves and mad that they wished he never came. And then the last year or two, maybe aging curve hits him a little harder. Last piece, Bill Guerin said, no changes in Iowa. Well, didn't see that coming. We have a coaching search now being launched because, Vancouver Canucks decided they were going to snatch up the services of one Brett McLean.
Yeah, it was a little bit surprising in a sense. I mean, I guess not surprising because he got a promotion to an NHL bench, and I think he was an assistant with the Wild for a number of years, and I think he wants to be an NHL coach at some point. I think the last couple of years have been rough in Iowa from a numbers record wise. No one can really dispute that, and he wore those losses hard, like he told me in that story I wrote a couple weeks back about wanting to get those guys prospects to the next level. But he has some ties to the area of Vancouver and Kelowna too, and he knows head coach Adam Foote well. And I think what we heard too is like Dean Evison gave a really strong vote of confidence or recommendation when he was filling out his staff very highly of Brett. So, good for him. And, it also was a great opportunity for the Wild to open things up and maybe find some more experienced coach for that position. You're handed a very talented prospect pool, or at least a number of those prospects are going to be there. Hunter Heidt, Riley Heidt next year, Charlie Stramel the year after. Like, you're going to have some important pieces in Iowa. So find somebody who has that experience. I think they have people that they have in mind. So it'll be more of a search than it was last time. You can look at your own staff with Ben Simon, who's coached Grand Rapids and with the Red Wings before. But other guys they can look at and have options and interview. But this is a great opportunity for them, Matt Hendricks, Bruce, Bill Guerin, the rest of the group, to find the right fit for Iowa and give them maybe some more juice and different perspective on a team that failed to make the playoffs 3 of the last 4 years. And winning is so important, at least in a lot of people's minds, to development. And so that'll be a really key hire, in my opinion, whether it comes down next week or the week after.
Feel free to tell me I'm an idiot, because I'm galaxy braining this a little bit, but the name that came to mind for me right away, Dan Bylsma.
Yeah.
Probably a stretch, but God, would that be a great fit? Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I mean, he was surprisingly let go after 1 year in Seattle.
He got done pretty dirty.
He had a lot of success in Coachella, in the AHL level. I don't know where his head's at as far as if he wants to coach again or at what level. But yeah, I mean, I think not just Dan Bylsma, but like just find somebody with experience of running a program, whether it's AHL or USHL or whatever. There's so many coaches that line up at that the draft every year, a coaches conference, and are just like looking for jobs and up and comers. So great opportunity if they decide to go that route, or if they wanted to try to find an experienced guy that's been in the NHL before, that's great too. But obviously it'll be some fresh blood and some fresh perspective for Iowa next year.
And it will be ever critical because I know this is obviously what most Wild fans are pointing at and watching, based on, of course, the very, very highly ranked, I think in the Athletic again this year, number 2, top prospect pool built, of course, by Jud Bracket. Let's kick it over to him. This interview is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions. All the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it, that makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 at checkout to take 10% off your entire order. Making his second appearance on Fellowship of the Rink, the architect of the highly touted Minnesota Wild prospect pool, Jud Bracket. Appreciate you jumping back on with us, Jud.
Well, thank you. That's quite the intro, too.
You're not going to like me as much after this first question. First question. If you were stranded in a desert with someone with only a bottle of water and a baseball bat, and you can't share the water, and the other person takes the water first, what do you do with the bat?
I feel like I might be in another team's combine interview right now.
Can you guess which team?
I know the team. It was certainly water bubble conversation last week in Buffalo.
What? So tell you what, I don't even need your answer. I want to know, what is a team trying to get out of a player with that question?
You know what? I don't believe there's some deeper intent, maybe other than just to make the player feel comfortable, right? Get them out of their rehearsed, canned answers, make them smile, make them fidget a little bit. And then, we do it, whether maybe he's talking about, Netflix series or something, let's just have a conversation, let your shoulders down, tell us a little bit about you. I know, the answers of you've been prepped and some of what's coming at you, but let's have a candid conversation. We only get 15 or 20 minutes here. So I assume that's probably just to make them squirm a little, get out of that, looking in the mirror. I've rehearsed this answer for weeks now, and I'm going to deliver this perfectly on Combine Day. But it's always entertaining. We typically actually ask the players, what is it? What's the question this year that you're getting that is so outlandish? You got to tell us about it.
Were there any other ones besides that?
No, I mean, we had a shorter list this year than years past. We didn't, without a first and without a third, we were pretty prescriptive with how many players we interviewed. We do a lot during the year. So it was a shorter combine week for us. So no, that was the one that we heard and had a good chuckle.
Yeah, obviously situational questions are probably more popular as recent years than previous years, right? That helps you think on your feet. What do you, maybe not deserted island in a baseball bat, but something else? Like, do you have an example of one that you've used in the past that you don't longer use anymore? So you're not giving away anything that you're like, oh, situational. How would you handle this dilemma, right?
We changed it up too. Like we've got some good questions that maybe we stayed away from this year because whether players talk back to their agents and they talk to the next kids coming in the next year and, hey, when you go into Minnesota, be prepared for this question. So I won't give them away. But you know what? A lot of times we've interviewed all these players during the year. We've done it regionally in a lot of situations. We've done it even with our human performance staff. So this is really just a continuation. Where do we leave off? Maybe something happened during the year that we want to talk about. We might even want to talk about something specific to a playoff game or something we saw, maybe a change in performance or body language, and be more specific. So we know the sort of the family backgrounds and a lot of what they've achieved and accomplished, but now we want to know what makes them tick.
You mentioned a shorter combine for you. Like, how you perspective how different it is for you and your staff to have no first round pick, no third round pick. Like, I think in previous years you could say you probably had like a list of 7 or 8 guys you wanted to meet at the combine, right, or talk to again. Like, is that like maybe 1 or 2 guys this year, or maybe you're just trying to like like what's your approach when you don't know? You probably don't hard to have a range of what guys will be there at your point, right?
Yeah, it's certainly hard. It's certainly harder to predict. Years past, when you know whether it's 13 or a specific number, you get to you can start to ballpark maybe 4, 5, 6 players that you think will be in that range. Run through mocks, run through scenarios. This year is different, and maybe in the end we'll be a better staff for it, right? We're really focusing on pick 52. The forecasting on that is well out of our control. But the job is still the job. We have to be prepared. We have to be prepared if Billy calls us and says, look, we're picking a 13 again. So we can't be surprised by that. We have to be prepared. Our list has to be as organized as it's ever been. But, right now, when we're having our internal discussions, we're focused on 52 and trying to find the best available player that, at that range. And, it's been a great exercise. It's really hard to follow along. It takes one team in front of you, right? One team in front of you to take the guy you were hoping gets there. So, but we've probably have never spent this much time on round 2. So maybe in years going forward, we'll be even better in this round as a result of it.
Is there more pressure to hit on 52 without having first and a third round? Like this is your first, a big pick for you guys since you don't have, unless you guys trade back into it, of course, but there's more pressure to like hit on this one with not having any lottery tickets to use.
I don't know if it's more pressure. I mean, as a staff, we want to hit on all our picks. We've identified something in every player that we've drafted. There's been something, whether their separation skills, something we saw during the year, where we think they're going in their development. So we're believers in these players no matter what. So to say, is there more pressure? Probably not. We want to hit on all these players. Do we have less insurance in terms of, if we do miss, we don't have that backup, third round pick, or we didn't already maybe hit on our first round pick. So yes, in that instance, yes, this second round pick becomes our first chance at a National Hockey League player. So the odds, as we all know, go down as the draft proceeds. So this is our best chance. Our best chance this year is at 52, and we're going to treat it like we always do. But yeah, we certainly want this player to help impact the Minnesota Wild in the future.
It's crazy to me that you said you might get better in the second round, because the running bit on Judd's Buds, that podcast that you absolutely started and are always on, you've dominated the second round. Like all of those players, you've plucked diamonds in the rough, or guys that maybe like some had first round grades on and they slid for whatever reason. I'm kind of curious though, with only having a second, no first, would it ever make sense to interview and sit down with guys, particularly to ask them about some of those guys that are going to be there in the second? Or is that something that's like a little bit tougher, like almost disrespectful of their time? I don't really know what the dynamic is.
No, it's a great question. Actually, in a previous year prior to being in Minnesota, we actually interviewed the player that was picked first overall, and more or less used our 20 minutes to talk about teammates and how they reacted to particular coaching styles, how they interacted with other players on a star-studded lineup. So we knew we had no chance at him, but we still felt it was valuable information. And listen, down the road, trades happen. You still want to know who these players are. If 4 years down the line, someone that went in this first round becomes available, and Billy asks us, in his draft year, what did you know? We still need to know.
Like a Yurchek thing, right? I don't know if you interviewed Yurchek that year, but that was example, right? If you didn't pay attention to those first 10 picks, then you're like, okay, well, I might not have had a conversation with him.
100%. So we still need to know these players. There may be a gap between draft day and as they're as they've started their pro career. There could be a small gap in some of our knowledge base, but going back to their draft day, we need to be just as sharp as if it was draft day.
Yeah, probably a little harder thing to put your finger on, but you see every year there's a little bit of a theme that develops for each draft class. Anything that stands out to you for the 2025 class?
You know what? There's not. I mean, there's some strength at position at the top of the draft, but every draft is unique, and it's unique to each team too. Some teams are maybe really need based and have to focus on it because this is their best chance to address something maybe they internally from their roster composition that they haven't been able to. So each draft, it could be their players could be really strong from a particular region. They could be particularly strong at a position. Some drafts are strong at goaltending. You have a year when you have Wallstead and Costa in the first round. So each draft is unique, but it's not just the player skill set that make you unique. It's also team needs and how they approach the draft. So, you know what? Since I've gotten to Minnesota, I can't even begin to explain the amount of mock drafts we've run, and we didn't forecast what the results were very often. We thought we have gone through every scenario, and you know what? You get to the draft floor and something new happens, and you still have to be prepared.
You mentioned your human performance team, and I've talked to you before about Aaron Bogosian. But I think when you get to the point of drafting these players and investing a lot in these players, it's important to know them and know them well. And like, how can you put in perspective, I guess, what Aaron has done for you, or how he kind of helps you identify those guys in that process of going forward?
Well, I mean, Aaron has obviously a very unique skill set and ability to read people, look into character. We really push on resiliency. For us, it's a key cog in terms of coachability, where you're going to be. We're talking about 17-year-old players and really we need them to be able to contribute and help us when they're 23, 24. So what do these formative years look like? How are they going to continue to improve? What, when they hit a wall or hit some adversity, how are they going to push through it? Because it's not going to be, there's very few seamless transitions to the National Hockey League. So, if we take someone like Marco Rossi, right, he has an unexpected health issue. And I think part of Marco's inner character and what his makeup is like is partly why he continues to succeed. Others may have stumbled and missed that year of development and may never have bridged that gap. But when you talk about high character, when you talk about kids that are committed, that are driven, that are willing to, miss their sister's wedding, I think those are important indicators that you have to be able to try to uncover at 17, which is not easy to do, but they become a predictor of future success.
That could be a good combine question in the future. Hey, would you skip your sister's wedding for me?
Yeah.
Kind of going off of Joe's question, but to get a little bit more granular with it, a lot of people have talked more recently about, hey, there's the guys that get you there versus the guys that get you through. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do you identify and find these guys that are going to be your playoff gamers, like a Sam Bennett? Like a lot of people are already kind of painting a Ryan Leonard in that light. How much do you focus on trying to find that? Or is that something that you think almost gets developed a little bit more post-draft?
Some of it's post-draft as players mature, but it's also our job to try to find the indicators, right? I mean, and it speaks to sort of the marathon of scouting, right? We maybe begin the year looking at physical traits, whether it be skating, whether it be skill levels. But as the year goes on, we're watching these players multiple times. So now you're seeing, how are they being used? Are they out late and close? Are they being used in D zone starts? How are the coaches deploying them? Are they killing on a 5-on-3? It's a pretty good indicator of trust. So, and then obviously, are they performing? Are they not only getting these opportunities, but are they thriving and are they excelling? So, those are good indicators. We've had some success here recently with players that, Ryder Ritchie's in the Memorial Cup only a week ago. Hunter Heidt wins the Memorial Cup a year ago. David Spacek wins a world championship. So these are players that are getting these experiences that are delivering, and that's all part of their development. It's deployment, it's opportunity. Winning is part of development too.
Maybe even a tougher thing to evaluate. Two guys that stand out this year, Matthew Schaefer, who's looked at as the first overall pick, and Roger McQueen, both had pretty limited games in their draft year. Different reasons, of course, but how do you evaluate a player effectively amongst their peers in that sense? And how much do you think, what happened with Caden Lindstrom, for example, hurts guys like McQueen and biases the jury a bit?
There's always bias year to year. I mean, we see it with, we're going to see it in a couple of weeks with the winner of a Stanley Cup, right? That blueprint might change a little bit. Is it a heavy two-way physical team that gets in your face, or is it speed and skill? Not that you can find a guy that fast anywhere else, but the blueprint can change when teams have success with it. So, you have to be firm in your beliefs and stick to what you believe is going to be, the causality behind a Minnesota Wild championship team. So we stay focused on that. It starts with leadership. It starts with communication. So when we are firm in our belief that this is what a Wild player looks like, we can continue to identify it and look for it throughout the draft.
I think we all know and understand that hindsight's 2020. And like, I'll tell you, every time I do a fantasy football draft, I've always looked back and like, oh, I should have drafted this guy number 2, or I regret taking this guy who always gets injured at number 1 overall pick, Christian McCaffrey. Sorry. But in your position, right, and like things are more on the line, it's obviously more important, and like the futures of franchises depend on it. Like, do you ever go back and like any regrets on maybe the what could have beens, or like we had these 2 guys in these similar spots, we took this guy, or like, many teams like passed on Matthew Nyes, for example, early and then didn't take him until later. Like, so do you have an example of, or do you have those feelings at all? Like
always. This is an incredibly humbling business, right? We're talking, and for us, and in the NHL, we're talking about 17, 18-year-olds, and not necessarily this is a draft and development, much like MLB. This is not a draft plug and play into your lineup or into your scheme, or so it can be very humbling. What you thought might happen doesn't, and there's also times where maybe you loved a player and someone picked them 2 picks in front of you, 3 picks in front of you, and it just wasn't, the opportunity wasn't there to do it. So there's always retrospect and looking back and learning from it. I try not to name names on the record, but yeah, there are players we look back on and say, man, like, we were so close, or we had it this way. Imagine if it was 1 or 2 off. But if you stay to your core values and you work with your staff and are truly believe in the picks you make, you're still going to be thrilled with what you have, and going to be stand behind the player that you picked and hope that they continue to develop the way you envisioned on draft day.
Yeah. That a topic that I kind of want to park on for a minute here, because it is so new and it is something that's going to kind of change the landscape of your job, but I mean, everyone's. The new rules between NCAA and CHL, right? I'm curious, first off, what's your perspective on developing in NCAA hockey versus CHL? Like, obviously there's going to be some kind of symbiosis between the two, but like, perfect example, the one that a lot of Wild fans salivated over. What if Riley Heidt could have played for the Gophers last year, right? How does that impact someone's development, and where do you see like the benefits of both leagues?
Look, both leagues have already proven that they can develop national hockey players. There's no doubt about that. So we can start there. There's not one track that is infinitely better than the other. They both have done it and done it with great success. Now, you bring up Riley Heidt. Could Riley Heidt have benefited from a year in college and playing against 23 and 24-year-olds to bridge the gap as he turns pro and likely starts in Iowa? Absolutely. I think that'll be the progression of CHL to NCAA, is instead of being 19 and 20 and having to turn pro and jump right into the American Hockey League, which is an incredibly strong, skilled, deep league. You now have the opportunity to bridge that gap, play a year or 2 in the NCAA against older players, maybe buy a little bit more time midweek for in the gym, help the body mature. It also depends upon where you are, physically and mentally. Some players can absolutely make that jump, but the ones that can't, or that need that a little extra time, I think you might see a NCAA being a transition before getting to the American Hockey League.
So I wonder then, and I'm galaxy braining this quite a bit, but do you see a world down the road where NHL teams get friendly with particular college teams, and their CHL player gets drafted, and you say, hey, I'd like you to go to this team because I trust their coach, trust their process, whatever. Like, is that something that you see being realistic, or is there just way more behind the scenes that would kind of unravel that?
Though, I mean, obviously, if you've drafted a player and your development staff is spending time with them, that relationship is starting to form. So, you are going to get input. You're going to get input from your agent. You're going to get it from your family. You're going to get it from the team that drafted you. So, yeah, there would definitely be instances where suggestions would be made, or, hey, this team has done a great job with X players in the past, or with defensemen specifically. So yeah, I think it's always informed decision. So you're going to try and get as much input. So teams will have a say as much as an agent or a family would, or, but geography comes into it. Some of these players were recruited by NCAA schools before they chose to go to the CHL. So that'll be part of it. They have relationship with the assistant coaches or head coaches. So there's always moving parts when it comes to recruiting, whether it be CHL or NCAA. But yeah, I think there's opportunity to build relationships there too, or where there already are relationships to expand upon it.
Yeah. And my last one on this, and again, a lot's going to be seen the next couple of years, but I got to imagine there's going to be some pretty drastic changes to just rules around retaining players' rights, right? Like, imagine you draft a CHL player and then they go over to college hockey and you have 2 years to sign them and you can't sign them because they're in college. Vice versa, like you draft a college guy, ends up pivoting CHL. Any concerns around that, or things that you in particular are looking to see flushed out?
I wouldn't say concerns right now. I think their expectation league wide is that there's going to be some clarity on this coming up. There needs to be, between the age that you're drafted, between when you enter the NCAA, how long teams will have your rights for. There'll be some clarity. I would assume even prior to the draft, there's going to have to be some.
You mentioned Marco Rossi earlier, and I know how huge believer you have been in him since draft day. I want to see if you can go back in the time machine a little bit and take us back to that day, draft day, and what you remember the most about you and Billy and those guys' conversations about on the clock for number 9. Obviously there's him up there, there's Perfetti, there's Lundell, there's Jarvis, all these other guys there. Like, what did you guys see in Rossi back then, and like that made him like the best pick then? And where is he in terms of where you thought he could end up being right now?
I think on draft day, what it was with us with Marco is, outside of the 40 goals, 80 assists, like the monster production, it was the detail that he played with. You had an import player coming over, that's undersized, that takes the OHL by storm. That doesn't happen. And you know what? And more than just the production, it was the driver. It was making others better. The detail in him, and from that, even at his size and at that age, we were steadfast that he's going to be a National Hockey League center. He's going to be a top 6 center. The hockey sense is unparalleled. And you know what? It was probably a slower role to becoming that player, but I think Marco has become the player that we thought he would be.
And from your standpoint, I know you spend so much time and like years getting to know these guys leading up to the draft. You draft them. Like, how much collaboration or how much input or how much conversation do you have with the development staff as they go forward? Because for me, it'd be hard for me to like invest this much, pick this guy, and like, this is where I see this guy coming in 4 years, but my hands are off of him at that point, right? Like, you kind of leave it up to chance, or leave it up to luck, or leave it up to different, dynamics involved with development, not just like in like the pro organization, but with the CHL or whatever else. Like, what's that dynamic for you after you pick them and shake their hand on draft day?
There's always a personal attachment to players that have been drafted in the amateur scouting staff, right? There's that bond the day it happens, right? The excitement and as we said before, the anticipation of them becoming the player that we envision. So we're always rooting for them, and as a result, some of them stay in the CHL or NCAA or in leagues in Europe where we continue to watch them. Some move into pro hockey quicker than others, and maybe we don't see their day-to-day results. We certainly follow it online and track but our communication with development is excellent. Brad Bombardier, it was Matt Hendricks prior to his new position, Cody McLeod, and obviously now Derek Steppen. But they're very hands-on, but they're also a great resource for us in terms of the feedback, what we thought was going to happen on the player, and maybe is or isn't that feedback coming back from us makes us better at our job too. Hey, did this player always have this, this nuance to their game, or how can they be better? Or, and that feedback, as they're watching the next 2 to 3 years comes back to us, and maybe we use it as a lesson going forward as to a player who can get better in an area that we didn't expect, or maybe a player that didn't achieve a level that we thought they could. So everything from the day you draft them is about development. So that staff is really important, but their feedback to us is also critical for our future evaluations.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit more about some of those guys that we've watched develop this season. I got a list of 5 guys that we were going to ask about, but I want to open it to you first. Like, is there 1 or 2 guys right away that you're like, I'm so excited about what this guy did this year?
I mean, obviously the headliner this year, is Zeev. He wins another World Junior, goes and wins a World Championship, gets a taste of the National Hockey League. He's the headliner in the sense of he continues to deliver. There's the excitement around his play, the skill level, it goes without saying how much he wins. And I think even, more important than all that is some of the quotes you hear out of the locker room about how quickly the players on the team already see it in him. So he's got an infectious personality, the skill levels there, and this is where he wants to be. Like, I think honestly, when he steps on the ice every night, he wants to be the best player. And I don't say that from a cocky, arrogant standpoint. I think he truly believes he can be and will be. So, that's going to continue to drive his game. And I just don't, I think, what his future potential might be is honestly is up to him.
Are you willing to tell us how high he was on your board?
He was high. He was not 12.
Fair. All right. We can move past that one. Another guy who, not the finish you would have liked to see, but the path there was, holy crap. Ryder Ritchie, a 2nd-round gem.
And you know what? I think when you look at Ryder too, he's an August birthday. He's still 18 years old right now. Came to development camp after draft and as a 17-year-old still. So I think his age proponent is also part of where he is in his maturation. I think you even see that the body is still changing. He's looks like he's pushing about 6'1" right now. So I think, again, a player who dealt with injuries in his draft year, settled in nicely, even had the injury this year with the skate to the eye to start the year, still finishes with 40 goals. There's no question about his ability to release the puck and mesh with other high-end talents. I think, for me, that his game is still very much in its infancy.
The one that we mentioned earlier, obviously the trade and the reason that there isn't a 1st-round pick for you, and you got to go out and enjoy graduation. David Jiricek, talk us through what you saw in his draft year and what you've seen since, and just how you see him projecting to be an NHLer, and why you and Billy thought this was the guy that we had to go out and get to bolster even further a great young blue line.
Yeah, his draft year, the hallmark of David's game is his compete level, right? You've got the huge hulking frame, 6'4", right shot, moves well enough. Like, it's still an area that he's continued to work on. But when you see him off the ice, he's still very much got pounds to put on and man strength to come. So I think with that too, you'll see more strength, more balance, more engagement on the ice. But he plays a very assertive game, loves to pinch at the offensive blue line, get involved, has a huge shot. And at the time in his draft year, had already played in the men's league, had World Junior experience, had been on the big stage, and had been a leader for his team, nationally and at home on his club team. So a player we believe in, and it just needs a little bit of streamlining in his development path, a lot of up and down time for him. And I think that speaks to the caliber of player. He's so close that at times you think he's ready, but sometimes he needs a little bit more seasoning. So a player we're excited about, great attitude, comes to work every day. I think at the end, it's a really hard player to find. Right shot, that size, with that pedigree. Again, you know, looking at your defensive core under 23, if you're talking Faber, Buyam, and Juricic, I think there's a lot to be excited about.
What fans are most excited about right now, he's finally coming over. Danila Yurov. I won't even ask a question. Just go.
I mean, you know what? Another player who, you know, had surgery in the offseason, has another injury during the season. But I think even if you saw how quickly he came back from his last injury, you can see how much fire there is in this player. Again, another player of ours that's won a championship, has led his team in scoring, plays down the middle, two-way, can skate, handles the puck, terrific shot. I'm really excited to see his integration into North America. Great personality, always has a smile on his face. He's been talking about being in North America since the day we met him in Montreal. So I expect him to attack it with that kind of vigor too.
And you've preached patience with Charlie Stramel all along, and like what a difference a couple of years makes, you know, in terms of the move to Michigan State, and Nightingale is a guy he trusts and knows. Like, is this more of the Charlie you envision drafting him, or where have you seen him take some steps kind of in his game where he's close to, he could be turning pro this year, I guess, if he wanted to, he's going back to state, but like, you know, this what you envision, and where is he at in your mind?
Just in hindsight, this was the perfect situation this year. Familiar coach, a program on the rise, big opportunity, and I also think it goes without saying that Will Morlock and the strength conditioning staff at Michigan State did a tremendous job. Charlie's, you know, significantly lighter this year, moving great, and I think also with Adam Nightingale and his staff that his identity is very clear, right? He's straight lines, he's getting to the net, he's making room, he's winning faceoffs. It was a lot of fun to watch Charlie this year because he was enjoying hockey again, playing well. You know what? It was a tough track for him. He's been through some things off ice. He went in early to school, had a coaching change, maybe lacked some support as well. And you know what? This was a great year, and we want to see him go back and do it again, and hopefully win a national championship. That'd be another guy for us that's going to be in a winning environment with expectations and playing meaningful games. So this was an awesome year to watch Charlie. I was in quite a bit. There's a freshman there also that's draft eligible, so it was you know, convenient to continue to check up on Charlie. But you know, you left every time really happy for him because you could see he was enjoying the game. There's times where he's still, even at a lighter weight, he's, you know, physically too strong for some kids in college hockey, which is great to see because that's never going to be the case in the National Hockey League. You can be as strong as you want. But he's a player type that you know, that fits very well in our structure of play. He's big, he skates, he's physical, he's imposing. He's got good detail in him, and he's in a winning program.
Do you have like one or two things you'd like to see him add to his bag in his senior year?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think he has the ability to absolutely dominate in the faceoff dot. You know, he's got good hands, he's got good leverage and strength. He is counted on, you know, but also, you know, on both sides of the ice, right? Not just his forehand side. We want to see him really dominate in the faceoff circle. It's gonna, you know, that's gonna dictate ice time as these guys go. You know, that it's something that's talked about a lot in Minnesota, ability to win faceoffs and penalty kill, and he's going to be one of those guys that's going to, you know, if he really can excel in those areas, that's going to create an opportunity for him sooner than later.
And we had Craig Button on our show a few weeks ago when we asked about Liam Ogren, and he's like, he knows I worked in Tampa for so long. He's like, he reminds me a little bit of Blake Coleman, like a really good middle six or third line winger that helps you win championships. Like, there's not a slight on him that he can't play up the lineup, but is that something that jives with you, or like what do you see, you know, from him that what he is and kind of can be?
Yeah, I think maybe you even see a little bit from Marco and Liam at the same time. Sometimes the conscientious two-way game can sometimes supersede the offensive ability. I mean, Liam can shoot the puck as well as anybody. To me, one of his strengths in his draft year was his ability to forecheck. So I think as he gets more and more comfortable and more of an opportunity to get in and pressure pucks and create turnovers, that you will start to see how strong he is at that. He's just great at angling. It's not that he runs guys over. He's just excellent angling. He's got a really good stick. He can create turnovers down low in the O-zone. So that's, I think, the next progression in his game. I actually caught him late in the year in Springfield. He had 2 goals that night. I mean, he's ability to beat goalies clean at that level with his shot, which is not easy to do. So he's coming. The confidence is there. Excited to see how he arrives at camp, because I know that, off ice he puts in a lot of time. He is built like a tank.
A guy that I was in Iowa for a while for a story, and they rave about Hunter Heidt. Like they said, like from day one, he was a pro. Like you tell him one thing and he didn't have to do it twice, right? And he was all situations trusted early on, which doesn't always happen from guys going from junior hockey to the pro hockey. But just, is that something you kind of sense when you had the draft year, or just not? What made him make the adjustment maybe easier than other guys of going first year pro and being able to be a relied upon guy in all situations?
I think a big one for Hunter is his mindset. He's always had, that good first step quickness and speed and skill, hockey sense. But I think for a guy in his frame, I think part of what made him really successful was that he chose to be. He chose to engage in battles. He chose to win pucks. He never takes a long route. He's quick on pucks. He forces things and he can read and react off others. So I think a lot of it, though, is that he decided to be as good as he's going to be. That was a choice for him to go in, make an impression. I think it starts at rookie camp. Even when he's amongst his peers, he wants to stand out. So, it's not always just about ability. Sometimes it's also, it's that drive, it's that compete, it's that will to want to get there. And I think Hunter has that.
Final question, brought to you as always by our good friends at Waggle Golf. First, make sure you head over to getyourwaggleon.com. Throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order. Judd, I'm going to have you step into your realm, and you're going to compile for me your dream 4-course meal.
Oh, man, the perfect meal. This is tough. Somewhere in here. Yeah, but I would probably, honestly, I'd probably start with some oysters, and they would be from the Cape. Just a good fresh salt water in there. I love oysters. We've got an oyster bar, but I still have not had enough, so I can never have enough oysters. I'm also a big tuna guy, so maybe tuna tartare as an app, and then I'd get into a fillet. And anyone that knows the port and can think back all the way to year one, we had a fillet with a blueberry balsamic demi-glaze, and that we've never replicated it, and it's been asked for before, and it was the best one we ever had, even back in 2004. So we might have to bring back the blueberry demi-glaze. And I'm a cheesecake. I love cheesecake, so straightforward. I don't even need any fruit or whipped cream, just a piece of cheesecake.
Oh my gosh, that speaks to my soul. You have no idea. Gotta ask though, what's the Jud Bracket steak order? How do you order it?
Medium rare.
Okay.
Or I'm also happy to just say chef's preference. So I know the hours that go into it. I know how they want to prepare everything prepared. Generally, if there's a question, I'm in a nice spot, I'll say chef's choice. If that's how he wants it prepared, if that's how he thinks it is best served, who am I to say otherwise?
I like that.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Like I was wondering, so who's all going to the draft for you guys? Like who's all going to be there?
Our whole staff will be in. Everyone's coming in to St. Paul. I think we have a small remote contingency going to LA because there's expectation that players are going to be there. So, but our amateur staffs and management, everyone will be in St. Paul.
This has to be the only year they're going to do this, right?
It sounds like it. The traction seems to be that we might be back in person next year.
As it should be.
Agreed.
I think writers and agents and GMs would probably agree or scouting staff love to be together in one spot, right? Doesn't have to be the Sphere every year, Although that's a bonus, but like
Could be.
Yeah, I mean, let's not acquiesce on that yet. If it's in the sphere every year, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks, Judd, for the time. I appreciate. I know it's been a busy time, especially after the combine, but we'll catch up with you in a few weeks here when the draft gets rolling. So thanks again for your time.
Awesome, guys. Thank you.
Thank you again to our amazing friends at Waggle Golf who continue to bring you all of these incredible guests. We got Father's Day coming up here this weekend. I'm sure a lot of people procrastinated. Heck, some people maybe don't even do the Father's Day gifts. I get it. But panicking last minute, polos, hats, quarter zips, you name it. Incredible options. Shop now. Anyone that's looking for more Stanley Cup playoff talk, if you want to hear more about the coach hirings and firings, I'm sure a lot of people want to hate listen to the Pete DeBoer stuff. You can check out Judd's Buds. New episode dropped Tuesday. You can check it out on the YouTube channel as well, The Soda Pod. Otherwise, we'll keep bringing the great content. All the NHL draft prep coming up. We got the, of course, free agent frenzy that hits right before the 4th of July. Stay with us for the ride. We appreciate all of you. Catch you next week. But until then, stay classy, stay to hockey.